I didn't even plan on showing up. That birthday invitation had been sitting on our kitchen counter for over a week, unopened like most things between me and Dana lately. I wasn't sure if we were ignoring each other out of apathy or if it had simply become a mutual, quiet agreement. She did her thing, I did mine. But something strange got into me that morning. Maybe it was the silence in the house or the way her toothbrush was still wet even though I hadn't heard her wake up. I picked up the invitation, reread it, and for the first time in months I decided to leave the house without telling her. I didn't expect much from that party. It was hosted by my old friend Carson, someone I hadn't seen in a while but used to be close with. He had moved into a bigger place with his fiancée, and the invite was for his intimate birthday dinner with a few people from our past lives. I figured I'd stop by, have a drink, shake some hands, and head back home to my usual empty evening. But when I walked into that backyard, with fairy lights hanging between trees and laughter spilling from every corner, I froze. There she was. Dana. In a dress I'd never seen before. With heels I'd probably paid for. Her hair was done differently, more effort than she'd made in months. She was laughing. Really laughing. And the worst part? She didn't see me. She was too busy whispering something into the ear of the man sitting next to her. I felt nothing. No jealousy. No anger. Not even confusion. Just this dense emptiness, like I was watching a stranger. They were sitting close, way too close. Her hand brushed his knee like it was muscle memory. His arm moved behind her back and didn't return to the table. They weren't subtle. They weren't hiding. And still, I couldn't move. It wasn't just the cheating. I wasn't even sure if they were cheating yet, but something inside me shattered in a way that didn't make noise. It was like looking at the last piece of a puzzle and realizing it didn't fit. It never had. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I walked past them like a ghost and headed straight to the bar. Carson spotted me and raised a glass with that goofy grin of his. I gave him a nod. I couldn't speak. Not yet. From across the yard, I watched Dana sip her wine, lean in toward that man. He was someone I recognized from her work, I think, and then disappear inside the house with him. My stomach should have twisted. My fists should have clenched. But I just took another sip of my drink and stared at the flame in the garden fire pit. The moment they came back out, her lipstick was smudged and his shirt was untucked. And I still felt nothing. But that was just the beginning. Because what I found out in the days that followed, the messages, the receipts, the recorded conversations I never should have had access to, changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Dana, and about the people we kept around us. And that moment at the party? That was the final breath before the plunge. Because I wasn't just watching a marriage fall apart. I was about to uncover a betrayal so deep, it would make me question whether Dana had ever been the woman I thought she was. The morning after the party, Dana didn't come home. She texted me around 2 a.m. saying she was crashing at Kelsey's house, her safe space, as she often called it when she needed to escape a conversation or a consequence. I didn't respond. I didn't even open the message until later that afternoon. I sat in the kitchen, sipping burnt coffee and staring at the dining table where we used to eat breakfast together. The sunlight caught the edge of the vase she insisted we keep filled with fresh tulips, an ironic little monument now, considering neither of us had bothered to replace them in weeks. The water had turned brown. I unlocked her laptop. I don't know what made me do it. Call it instinct, or maybe it was just a quiet, dangerous kind of curiosity. She never logged out of anything, never thought she had to. Dana always assumed I'd never snoop, that I didn't have it in me. She was wrong. Her email was open. I clicked through the inbox without really knowing what I was searching for. Most of it was boring: promotions, online orders, yoga class confirmations. But then, buried in a folder she must have thought I'd never check, one labeled simply work, I found it. A thread of emails between her and someone named M. Stevens. The man from the party. He wasn't from her office like I thought. He was from a consulting firm, one she met during a work retreat in Arizona 6 months ago. The earliest messages were professional. But they evolved slowly into something else. Into something vulgar. Personal. Dangerous. There were hotel confirmations. Uber receipts. One message, timestamped from the night of our 11th wedding anniversary, simply read, "Tell him you're going to yoga. I'll have the wine waiting." I wasn't even angry. Not yet. My mind didn't know how to process what I was seeing. I screenshotted everything and sent it to myself. Then I found her cloud account still linked to the MacBook. A video was syncing. A blurry, low-lit recording from a hotel room. I didn't open it. Couldn't. But I knew what it was. Later that day, I called Carson. I wanted to ask him one question. Just one. "Did you know?" He hesitated. That was enough. Carson cleared his throat, started talking fast. Too fast. Look, man, I didn't think it was my place to say anything. Dana's a grown woman, and I figured if you guys had issues, you'd deal with them. I didn't want to get in the middle. She was in your house? I said, my voice calm but cold. Making out with someone else in front of your guests. Was that not in the middle enough? He had no answer. Just silence. Then he hung up. That night, Dana came home as if nothing had happened. She threw her purse on the couch, asked if I wanted Thai or pizza. I stared at her like I was seeing a stranger try to play my wife in a really bad audition. I'm not hungry, I said. She blinked. Are you okay? I wanted to laugh. Instead, I asked her, how long has it been going on? She froze. That's the thing about guilty people. They don't ask, what are you talking about? They go quiet. Their minds scramble to calculate how much you know, where the holes are in their story. She sat down across from me. Her face turned to stone. I don't know what you think you found, but 6 months. Arizona. The yoga lie. The hotels. The emails. The video. The color drained from her face. She looked at the floor. I didn't mean for it to happen. You did, I said. More than once. That night we didn't speak again. I slept in the guest room. Or tried to. Her muffled sobs carried through the thin walls like nails dragging across a chalkboard. But they didn't move me. Not the way they used to. She cried for herself. Not for me. Not for what she destroyed. The next morning, she was gone before sunrise. No note. No apology. Just silence. But I had already decided. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to confront her friends. I was going to end this my way. Calculated, cold, and completely silent. Because what she didn't know was that I had already set things in motion. And she was about to discover that the man she betrayed wasn't broken. He was awake. 3 days passed without a word from Dana. No texts, no calls, no sign she even existed anymore in this house. The absence felt strangely peaceful. Like someone had finally removed the static from a radio that had been buzzing in the background for years. I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. I took a personal day from work, told my boss I had a family emergency. In truth, I needed space to think, to breathe, to plan. I started by pulling out our wedding album. Not for nostalgia. Those pictures didn't bring me pain or comfort. I just needed to remind myself of who I'd once been. What I'd promised. What she had so easily discarded. As I flipped through pages of staged smiles and choreographed kisses, I remembered the best man's toast. Here's to Jason and Dana, Carson had said, raising a glass. Proof that real love doesn't need to be flashy. It just needs to be real. How ironic that the same man who gave that toast had watched her grope another guy in his kitchen last week. By the afternoon, I'd gathered enough evidence to make a lawyer uncomfortable. Screenshots, emails, synced cloud data. She was careless. Maybe she thought I'd never look because I'd never looked before. But now that I had, I couldn't unsee it. One file stood out. A recorded voice memo titled, Vegas Confession 1. I hesitated before clicking. But curiosity has a way of choking logic. Her voice crackled through the speakers. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, she said, laughing nervously. He's so boring. I mean, I still love him in a way, but it's like loving an old sweater. Comfortable but not exciting. And Mark makes me feel alive. Every time I see him, I forget I'm someone's wife. She paused, then whispered, I don't want to choose yet. I want both lives. She wanted both lives. I sat there, feeling my pulse slow to something strange, something almost meditative. The kind of calm you feel just before jumping off a ledge. This wasn't sadness. This wasn't betrayal anymore. This was detachment. I had detached. That night, I called my old friend Ellis. He was a tech specialist who once helped my cousin track down a scammer pretending to be a landlord. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to pique his interest. I need to verify a few locations, maybe some deleted texts. You think you can help? He didn't ask why. Just said, send me what you've got. While waiting, I decided to pay someone a visit. Not Dana. Not Mark. I went to see her sister, Brielle. She opened the door, surprised, but not cold. Jason? Is everything okay? I didn't say a word. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the folder titled Dana Lies, and showed her the video thumbnails. Her face went pale. She stepped aside. Come in. For 2 hours, we sat at her kitchen table. She confessed things I hadn't even asked for, how Dana had started drinking more during work trips, how she'd once come home from San Diego with a bruise on her thigh and claimed it was from hiking, though she'd never hiked a day in her life. But what Brielle said next chilled me. Did you ever hear about the Boston trip? She asked. The one she told you was a women's leadership summit? I nodded. She didn't go alone. I blinked. She went with Mark. I only found out because she accidentally sent me a picture of their hotel room, meant to send it to him, I guess. She begged me not to tell you. Said she was just confused, didn't want to throw everything away yet. I told her to confess. She promised she would. She never did. Brielle poured herself a glass of wine and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I should have said something. I just didn't want to blow up your life. My life was already a lie, I said quietly. Before I left, Brielle hugged me. Not the kind of hug filled with pity, more like the kind you give someone standing on the edge of something final. When I got home that night, I saw Dana's car in the driveway. I didn't park. I didn't go inside. I kept driving. And I didn't know exactly where I was headed. But I knew this, she wasn't going to be the one to end our story. I was. I drove for hours that night. No music, no phone calls, just the hum of tires and the storm in my head. It was strange how freeing it felt to move with no destination, no plan, no voice telling me what to be or who to come home to. Somewhere outside of town, I pulled into a roadside motel, one of those forgotten places with buzzing lights and cigarette-smelling pillows, and crashed for the night. I didn't dream. My mind was far too alert for that now. By morning, my phone had 17 missed calls and a dozen messages from Dana. She'd clearly come home to an empty house and panicked. But I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to give her access to me again. Not after everything I knew now. Instead, I texted Ellis. Me, any luck? He replied within seconds. Ellis, you're gonna want to see this in person. I turned the car around and drove straight to his place. He lived in a second-floor apartment above a nail salon with 3 monitors glowing against the dark curtains. When he pulled up the files, my hands went cold. Dana hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been planning an exit. Ellis showed me archived messages Dana had deleted months ago, some from Mark, others from a woman listed as legal advice. There were discussions about separating finances, her asking about options for discreet divorce steps, and even one chilling message that read, "He'll be fine. He's predictable. Once he finds out, I'll act devastated, cry a bit, and we'll agree it just wasn't working. I'll walk away clean." She had pre-written my reaction. She had scripted the collapse of our marriage, confident I'd fold like a paper tent in the wind. And maybe a few years ago I would've. But not now. I asked Ellis if he could pull up anything else on Mark. He dug deep. What we found next turned the whole story on its head. Mark wasn't just Dana's lover. He was married. 2 kids. Lived 3 towns over with a stay-at-home wife and a mortgage. He wasn't some spontaneous thrill. He was an escape artist, balancing a double life so cleanly that even his social media looked boring: golf weekends, backyard BBQs, pictures of his dog. But one detail blew it wide open. 3 months ago, Dana transferred nearly $9,000 to a shared account labeled M&G Consulting. It wasn't a business expense. It was registered under Mark's name and another woman I didn't recognize. Ellis found the LLC. It had no physical office, no staff. Just a mailbox and a vague website that hadn't been updated in over a year. Money laundering? Hidden savings? A slush fund for weekend getaways? I didn't know yet, but I knew it wasn't innocent. I left Ellis's place with everything I needed and one more thing I hadn't expected: clarity. This wasn't just a betrayal of the heart anymore. It was premeditated. It was strategic. Dana hadn't stumbled into this like a broken wife craving attention. She had built it brick by brick while looking me in the eyes every morning and asking if I wanted almond or oat milk in my coffee. I went back home that evening. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, arms crossed like a teacher waiting to scold a student. "Where the hell have you been?" she asked, voice sharper than I expected. I didn't answer. I dropped my keys on the counter and looked around like it was my first time seeing the place. The photos on the wall, the mugs she picked out in Santa Fe, the framed wedding vows she insisted we display in the hallway, they all felt like props from a play that had closed years ago. She followed me into the living room. "You think disappearing for 2 days is mature? You don't answer, you don't call back, and I'm just supposed to wait here like..." I cut her off. Vegas. Boston. Arizona. You think I'm still the fool who believed in yoga retreats and women's leadership summits? Her mouth opened but nothing came out. I know everything. And I mean everything. You and Mark. The consulting account. The lawyers. The fake strategy for a clean exit. Now she panicked. Jason, I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught, I said. She reached for my arm. I pulled away. You lost the right to touch me when you started planning your next life without me. She looked like she wanted to cry, but I could see in her eyes that it wasn't remorse. It was fear. Fear of exposure. Fear that the man she underestimated had finally stepped out of her control. I turned to leave the room but stopped. Oh, and by the way, I said without looking at her, tell Mark his wife deserves to know everything too. Maybe she'd be interested in that joint account. Or the voice memo you sent him from our anniversary. I didn't wait for a reply. I went into the bedroom, closed the door behind me, and began preparing the next step because if Dana wanted a clean exit, I was going to give her one. But not the way she expected. And certainly not one she'd walk away from feeling proud. That night, while Dana slept in the guest room either because she was too ashamed to face me or too scared of what I might say next, I stayed up in our bedroom, lit only by the soft glow of my laptop screen. The house felt like a stranger's home. The air between the walls was too quiet, as if even the structure itself had picked a side. And it wasn't hers. I wasn't looking for revenge. I need to make that clear. I wasn't going to stoop to her level and start flinging dirt just to feel powerful. No, what I wanted was far simpler and far more unsettling to someone like her. I wanted her exposed. Not in a dramatic way. Not in front of crowds. I didn't want a viral moment or a scream fest at some fancy restaurant. I wanted her to see what it felt like when everything she thought she controlled crumbled, quietly, efficiently, and without the satisfaction of knowing I was the one pulling the strings. The first thing I did was draft an anonymous email. Not from my main account. Ellis helped me set up a private server, scrubbed clean, untraceable. I attached every file, screenshots of the emails, the voice memos, hotel reservations, and bank transfers to the fake consulting company. Then I sent it to 3 people. Mark's wife, whose email Ellis had found buried in a digital newsletter sign-up. Dana's HR manager, since she'd been using work-funded retreats for her affairs. My attorney with the subject line, contingency files. For immediate use if needed. Next, I quietly moved money. Not all of it, just enough that she would notice. I had full access to our joint accounts, and though Dana had started hiding funds, she hadn't noticed that I'd been slowly siphoning off small amounts over the past few weeks since I began suspecting something was off. I rerouted them into a private savings account I'd opened in my name only. Then came the house. I knew she'd never think I'd have the spine for it, but she underestimated how long I'd been thinking about this. A month before the party, before any of this fully unraveled, I'd started speaking to a realtor friend of mine, purely hypothetical. I told him. I was curious what the house might go for. Curious about options. Yeah? It was no longer hypothetical. By the next afternoon, I had an appraisal scheduled. I didn't tell Dana. I didn't need to. She started noticing things. First, the missing savings. Then, the removal of a few framed photos from the hallway. She found me in the garage on Sunday tossing old boxes into the back of my truck. What are you doing? She asked. I didn't turn around. Cleaning. She stepped closer. Cleaning for what? The future. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, as if flipping a switch, she tried to re-engage. Jason, I made a mistake, okay? I didn't plan for this to happen. I felt invisible. You were always working. You stopped touching me. You stopped seeing me. I looked at her. So your answer was to find someone else while you still lived under my roof? To take money from our accounts? To build an exit plan with your side guy while I made you dinner every damn night? She tried to touch my arm again. I stepped back. Stop pretending this was an accident. You built this. You laid every brick. I just didn't look closely enough until now. She dropped the act. I saw it. The flicker in her face, the one that said he's not supposed to be this calm. He's supposed to yell. Fight. Beg. But I gave her nothing. I stayed busy. Packing. Planning. Quietly dismantling the life she assumed would remain hers no matter what she did. She kept texting Mark. Yes, I saw that too. But their messages were frantic now. Nervous. Paranoid. She even typed. He knows. I think he's doing something. He's too quiet. Mark replied. Stay calm. He'll come around. He always does. They didn't know me anymore. Maybe they never did. The following Friday, I went to see Dana's mother. She and I had always been oddly close, even after Dana began pulling away emotionally. Her mom, Evelyn, was sharp, observant, and never fully trusted her daughter's sudden behavior over the last year. I sat at her dining table and handed her a sealed envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Everything," I said. She opened it, read the first page, and her mouth slowly parted. "My God," she whispered. "She's been this whole time?" I nodded. She looked at me with something between horror and heartbreak. "Jason, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I told her. "But you should know before she tells you some sugar-coated version of events." Evelyn wiped her eyes and looked away. "I always told her, don't destroy something good because you're bored." "But Dana, she's always been reckless when she feels untouchable." "She's not untouchable anymore." Before I left, Evelyn said something I didn't expect. "You're not like the other men she's broken." I paused. "No, I'm not." I went home that night, and for the first time in months, I slept deeply. Because I had a plan. And the trap was already set. Monday morning hit like a silent bomb. Dana came down the stairs wearing that old white blouse she used to save for client meetings, a hair tied back, as rimmed with the fake redness of someone who didn't sleep. Or pretended they didn't. She stood by the fridge waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I stirred my coffee and stared out the kitchen window, watching the neighbor's dog chase nothing across their lawn. It felt more real than anything happening in our house. She cleared her throat. "I scheduled a session with a couples counselor this week. Her name's Dr. Pert. I think maybe we should talk things through." The word "we" hit like static. As if there was still a we worth dragging into some sterile office with boxed tissues and awkward silences. I didn't answer. Just took a slow sip, then stood and walked past her without a glance. Behind me, I heard her mutter, "You can't just shut down." But yes, I could. That was the only thing I still had control over, my silence. And it drove her insane. Later that day, the house appraisal went through. The agent, a woman named Carla, walked through each room methodically, jotting things down while pretending not to notice the tension in the air. Dana tried to smile and asked stupid questions like, "Are walk-in closets still a selling point these days?" as if we were just two people downsizing for retirement. Carla didn't blink. She handed me the paperwork privately before leaving and whispered, "You've got options. Let me know when you're ready." That same afternoon, Ellis sent a final encrypted folder. Inside were financial forensics on the M&G consulting account. Turns out Dana had moved money not only from our joint funds but also from a trust my late uncle left me, a trust one told her never to touch. She must have accessed it when I was out of town a few months back. The betrayal took on a new shape. It wasn't just infidelity now, it was theft. That was the moment something inside me solidified. My detachment transformed into something harder, colder, immovable. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. I printed everything, every document, every email, every receipt, and handed it all to my lawyer the next morning. We filed for divorce that day, irreconcilable differences. Clean. Uncomplicated. But in the background, a civil suit was also prepped. For the trust breach. For fraudulent financial activity. For emotional damages if it came to it. When Dana came home that night, she found the letter on the kitchen table. One envelope contained the divorce filing. The other held a detailed list of what I knew, what I had documented, and what would be used if she contested anything. I was in the garage, boxing tools, when she found it. Her footsteps stopped suddenly, then came stomping in. "You're divorcing me?" I didn't even look up. "Yes." "And threatening legal action?" "Not threatening. Just informing." "You can't do this, Jason," she snapped, her voice pitching higher. "You don't have proof of everything. You're bluffing." I calmly walked past her, grabbed my phone, opened a folder labeled insurance, and played one of the memos. Her voice crackled through the speaker. "He's like furniture at this point. Useful, stable, but replaceable." She went pale. "I have hours of recordings. Your sister knows. Your mother knows. Your HR department will know when the audit starts. And Mark's wife? She knows too." Dana slumped into a chair, shaking her head. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." I turned and finally looked her in the eye. "But you meant for it to start. You meant for the lies. You meant for the double life. This is just the fallout." She was crying now, but it didn't land. Her tears were currency she'd spent too many times. They were cheap. Spent. And I wasn't buying anymore. I walked into her bedroom, zipped up my duffel bag, and pulled out the envelope Carla had left, the house offer. "I'm accepting this," I said. "You have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to stay. I'll leave first. I want no part of this place anymore." Dana stood, breathing hard like she'd just surfaced from deep water. "We can fix this." I was confused. "People make mistakes, Jason." "You didn't make a mistake," I replied. You made a plan. And then I walked out the door. No yelling. No slammed cabinets. No final dramatic exchange. I just left. Because that's the part that really breaks people like her. Not rage. Not violence. Silence. And the realization that the person they thought would never leave already had. When I left the house that night, I didn't drive far. I went to stay at an old friend's guest cabin about 40 minutes outside the city, nestled between tall pines and long-forgotten hiking trails. It wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful. No cell signal, no Wi-Fi, just the sound of wind moving through trees and the occasional bird reminding me I was still alive. I stayed there for 3 days without speaking to anyone. Not even Ellis. I needed time to reset, to peel Dana's voice and scent and lies off of me like smoke-soaked clothes after a fire. I let my thoughts wander without forcing them anywhere. Let them creep and crawl and sort themselves out. And in that silence, something powerful happened. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. Not numb. Not broken. Just done. The way you finish a book that's gone on too long and finally close the cover with no intention of rereading it. I'd mourned enough. Now I was rebuilding. But while I stepped away from the wreckage, Dana's world began collapsing behind me, piece by piece, all without my involvement. The beauty of the truth is that once it gets out, it doesn't stop moving. On the 4th day, when I finally turned my phone back on, I had over 80 unread messages. First, from Mark's wife. She'd found my anonymous email, opened every file, and responded not with rage, but with gratitude. She said I'd given her clarity. She told me she had suspected something for years but didn't have the courage to face it. Now she did. She'd filed for divorce and had already frozen their accounts. Then came the messages from Dana's HR department. Apparently, the forwarded documents had made their way to corporate compliance. An internal audit had been launched. Her use of company funds for retreats was under official investigation and her access to internal platforms had been revoked. In the final message, a cold note from her supervisor read, "Dana, pending the results of the audit, you are placed on administrative leave without pay. Please return all company property immediately." The next dozen messages were from Dana. She begged. She raged. She accused me of turning people against her, said I'd weaponized silence, said I was vindictive and heartless and ruining her life just because I couldn't take one mistake. One mistake. Funny how cheaters always shrink years of deception into a single word. As if distilling it makes it more forgivable. But the most telling message came at the end. It simply read, "If I lose everything, you better believe I'm taking you down with me." I laughed when I read it. Because there was nothing left for her to take. I'd already walked away. But just to be sure, I responded with the only message I would send her since the day I left. "You lost me long before I ever lost anything. Do whatever you need to feel powerful. Just know everything you built was a house of cards. All I did was open the window." She didn't reply. Instead, I got a call from Brielle. "Jason," she said, "have you seen the Facebook post?" I hadn't. Dana had taken to social media in a last-ditch attempt to rewrite the narrative. A long, tearful post about betrayal, not her betrayal, of course, but mine. She painted herself as a loving wife abandoned by a cold husband who ghosted her during a tough emotional period. She framed it as mental health strain, called me emotionally abusive, and even claimed I had orchestrated a smear campaign to isolate her. The comments were a battlefield. Friends we hadn't spoken to in years chimed in. Some offered support. Others called her out. But what surprised me most were the private messages I received from people I barely knew, old acquaintances, former co-workers of hers, even a couple of neighbors telling me stories that made my stomach turn. She tried to kiss my husband at a barbecue last year. She used to flirt with her boss constantly, everyone at the office knew it. My sister caught her in a hotel lobby downtown 2 years ago. She lied and said she was meeting you. We believed her. It was all unraveling. And I didn't have to say a word. I stayed in that cabin another week. Watched the leaves begin to fall. Let the noise from her collapsing empire drift further away with every passing hour. When I finally returned to town, it was not to the home I once shared with Dana but to a new apartment. Clean. Quiet. Unfamiliar in a way that felt exactly right. I stood on the balcony that first night back, watching the lights of the city blink below. Somewhere out there, Dana was probably crying. Or screaming. Or making up more stories to preserve whatever self-image she still had left. But none of that mattered. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just reacting to her chaos. I was living without her in the equation. And I liked it that way. 3 months later, I barely recognized my life, and that was the best thing that could have happened. I signed the house sale papers 2 weeks after I got back into town. The realtor shook my hand with a warm smile, told me it was a clean deal. Dana had tried to delay the process, of course, claiming emotional distress and last-minute legal complications. But everything had been so well documented, so meticulously prepared, that her noise meant nothing in the eyes of the court. The house sold above asking price. My lawyer wired my share directly to a new account under my name only. A few days later, I received a short, dry notice in the mail: divorce finalized. No fanfare. No courtroom drama. Just a crisp, legal acknowledgement that the chapter was over. And just like that, I was free. But freedom's a funny thing. You think it's going to come crashing in like thunder. Instead, it arrives slowly. Quietly. In the form of small, forgotten pleasures, sleeping through the night without stress migraines. Cooking for one and actually enjoying it. Reading a book from start to finish without looking up to wonder where your spouse is or who they're texting. Silence, not as punishment, but as peace. I started reconnecting with people not out of obligation, but out of real curiosity. Brielle and I spoke a few times. She'd apologized more than once for not speaking up sooner. I told her the truth: we all see what we're ready to see. I didn't hold it against her. Ellis and I began meeting every Friday for drinks. He joked that if I ever got bored, I should consider a career in espionage. You handled that entire thing like a quiet war, he laughed one night. No blood, no fire, just strategy. It wasn't just the friendships that changed, it was me. I started saying yes to things I used to put off. Hiking trips, late-night movies, random road trips to places I hadn't seen since college. I bought a used motorcycle. Not because I needed one. Just because I always wanted to and never did. Dana thought they were irresponsible. Funny how the things she disapproved of were the exact things that made me feel alive again. Then one afternoon at a local bookstore downtown, I met someone. Her name was Avery. She worked part-time at the front desk, stocking shelves, recommending titles to lost-looking customers. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She asked if I needed help finding anything, and when I said something that feels like starting over, she handed me a book with a soft smile and said, "That's my favorite. It won't fix you, but it'll understand you." That conversation turned into coffee. Coffee turned into long walks. Walks into dinners. And eventually into something more. She didn't know anything about Dana. Not at first. She didn't pry. And that made me want to share. When I finally told her the story, she didn't gasp or try to fix anything. She just listened. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You're not broken. You were just badly held. That was it. It wasn't that I was weak or naive or blind. I'd simply been trying to build a future with someone who never intended to carry their half of it. Yeah? Now I carry my own life, and the people beside me, they walk because they want to, not because they're hiding something behind them. I don't hate Dana. I don't love her either. What we had is a closed door in a long hallway. She taught me what betrayal looks like in its quietest form, and that's a lesson I wouldn't unlearn even if I could. But what came after her? That's what matters. A new version of me. A life that's mine alone. And finally, someone beside me who doesn't wear masks. So yeah, I saw my wife at that birthday party and felt nothing. Yeah? I feel everything. But only where it counts.